Hey everyone. So in this video, I'm going to be going over my process for UVing. I'm going to be using this male base mesh character as the example. And this guy already has UVs on him, um, which I'll show here. It's set up into 4 UDIMs, or 4 UV tiles. And so I'm just going to be recreating that as best I can. And I'm going to show you each cut that I make, and the general reason why I make the cut there and its purpose, and then hopefully you can use these principles for UVing whatever organic character you might need to. So I'm going to start with the head and see how long this takes, and then I'll move on to the body. All right, let me. Alright, so here are the UVs. Let me duplicate this guy, hide him, and then let me delete these UVs. So, start with the head. The first thing that you want to do is, I like to separate the body from the head. So there's really only a few tools. There's a lot of tools available, but there's really only a few tools that I use. In the UV editor. So where do you want to separate the head from the body? I use this base mesh for a lot of things, usually for portraits. And so I like to have kind of more of a bust in a little bit more of the traps and chest available, so that it's not just like a floating head. There's a little bit more of, you can see the outline of where the torso would be. I'm going to select this loop, and I'm just going to hit Control to deselect those, and then I'll come down here. Oops, looks like symmetry is off. So let's turn that on. And then I'll select this. And that's where the first cut will be, I think. Before we do that, we have to get some base UVs in there. So usually I just create camera-based UVs just to have something in there. I'll just push this off to the side for now. And then go back to Edge. Select that again. So then this will be my first cut. So one of the main tools that I use is Shift X to cut, and then Shift S to sew. So you can see how the seam will highlight when I hit Shift X. You can see that now this shell is separated from the body. So we'll worry about the body in a little bit. I'm going to move this over here. So a lot of the times I see people, when they UV the head, they don't make any cuts except for right up the back, and usually it's one cut, and it usually covers from the top of the back to somewhere in the middle of the scalp, and then they just flatten everything out. And there's nothing wrong with that. Let me actually hide this as well, so we can just focus on the head. There's nothing wrong with that, and I do make that cut as well. But then there's some additional cuts that I like to make, so things fit a little bit better in the tile. And I like to have a little bit more texture resolution on the front of the face than everywhere else. Some people, I've heard different arguments about whether you should have perfect uniform texture resolution throughout the entire body. What I mean by that is, let me turn this other one back on. I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but if I turn on my checkerboard, you can see that there's a little bit more, there's more checkers on the front of the face than on the back here. And the rest of the body has relatively uniform UVs. And that's because I took this front UV tile and scaled it up slightly because I want a little bit more texture resolution, because this is a part of the body that's going to be seen the most and have the most close-ups. Now, if you're using a program to texture the skin and you want to apply, like say in Substance Painter, you have like a smart material or something that's going to be applied uniformly over the whole body, then you'd want uniform UVs, because the texture resolution will then change. It'll look squished in this area, in the face area, because there will be more of that texture applied, more texture density compared to with the rest. But if you're texturing this by hand, like I usually do, I usually hand paint the textures, then it really doesn't matter, because you're not applying the texture uniformly, you're just painting it on. Alright, back to UV. Let me turn off the checker. Alright, so the first cut that I'll make is along the back here. Oops, and I select that whole front face too. So I'm just holding Control, getting rid of my selection that I don't want. Oops, and it looks like it selected the whole body too. Let's just try that again. Select that bottom edge. Go to the top, select that one, and I hit Shift X. Now if I go to my UV shell and hit Control U to unwrap, you'll see a lot of people's unwraps that look kind of like this, but there are problems with this, and if I turn the checkerboard back on, you'll see that it doesn't really give you uniform texture density, and it gives you more texture density in areas you really don't need. If you look, turn off object mode. If you look here, the checkers are smaller here and actually larger in the face because of the way it unwrapped the UVs. The face area is a little bit more squished. So let me turn this off. So what I like to do is separate the front half of the face from the back, or the front half of the head. So I'm going to make a cut here, and then all the way down. And then from here, all the way up. Shift X. So then I'm going to have these two back shells. And I'll hit Control U. And I'll just leave those over to the side. You can separate the ears out, but I don't think it's totally necessary. That is something you could do if you wanted to have the ears separate on their own shells. Shift X, select the shells, and unwrap. And it might give you a little bit better texture density on just the ear shells. But I don't really think it's needed. The ears really aren't going to be something that gets highlighted in your model too much. You might see it on the back, on the side, but and let me sew this one edge too, so you can see over here. Shift S for sew, And then let me select the shell, and I'll unwrap it again. And then that'll give me a lot better texture density. So let me select these 3 shells, and I'll hit Control Unwrap one more time just to see if it changes anything else. And then I'll hit Control L to lay it out. Now this is just the automatic layout, and it's not the best. I usually do this to get them roughly the right size and then see if I can rearrange them and get a little bit more space out of them. All right, cuts left to make. So the next thing that I do is I cut out the eye bags and the mouth bag. And this is just to give us a little bit more even distribution of the texture density, because the more, you see it here, the more polys we have that have to get flattened out, it's going to squish that area in. Here as well. So this lip area is getting squished. If I turn this on, you can see how there's some strange patterns with the checker area around the mouth. You see how it's getting squished in around the eyes as well. So we're going to cut those out. Let's turn off the checker. Let me go into the model. And I make this cut, honestly, anywhere is good. Probably one back. This is where the carbuncle was extruded out, so I'll just cut one loop behind that. And I'll say Shift X, and then that will be its own, or 2 UV shells. And then let me do it for the mouth bag, and it's similar. So maybe 1 or 2 back loops from where the lips meet. Maybe 1 here, just to separate the mouth bag out. And I'll say Shift X. And then I'll select all these shells. Oops, UV shells, select them all, hit Control U. And you see now that I made those cuts, it evened out a little bit. It gave us a little bit more even texture density. And I'll hit Control L. So the mouth bag here, you can see when it had room to stretch out and wasn't confined within the shell, this is how much it would stretch out. Although we don't really need this much texture density because we're never really going to see this. It's just going to be like a dark red that's inside the mouth. Same with the eye bags. So these can be scaled down. So from here, you can either try to rearrange these shells to try to make them even. Looks like, yeah, this is all relatively even. Or you can do like I did and scale these down ever so slightly and try to fit them on this 1/2. And then scale up this tile to, or this shell, to try to give you a little bit more texture density. Or you could move these shells over to another UDIM and just have this front face take up this entire tile. Up to you. And then one thing that I'll add before I finish up is if you have this is an incredibly frustrating thing. If you have symmetry turned on, even though it's not symmetrical within the UV editor, and you try to select a single tile, it'll select it as if you were in the viewport. So if you want to move tiles individual of each other, you have to turn symmetry off. And that goes for rotating too. So if you wanted to try to straighten these out and you wanted to select this guy, they would both rotate. And let me go back to the one that's done already, and you can see how I have this arranged. So I think this was the best job that I could do, get the most density out of all these tiles within a single, or all these shells within a single tile. All right, So that pretty much does it for the face. It looks like I've gone a little bit long on this, so I'll do the body in a separate video. Stay tuned for part 2. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Like, share, and subscribe, all that good stuff. If you have any comments or questions about anything I went over with the face UVs, leave it in the comments below. And until next time, thanks for watching, guys.